It's tough to find good news these days, and that's why today I'm so excited to bring you some, and it's all about our trans friends. First, 26 medical and psychotherapeutic organizations from across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland have just dropped a massive 400-page report that definitively supports the need for comprehensive gender-affirming care for transgender youth, and which directly rebuts the lack of scientific data in the CAS report. In case you missed it, last summer I did a video about the CAS report going over some of the serious problems, where they misrepresented the research on trans care in order to justify laws that withhold care from the young people who desperately need it. As journalist Erin Reed points out in her newsletter, the new report criticizes the CAS review and NHS's recommendation of psychotherapy for gender dysphoria as without evidence and as potentially harmful. Psychotherapy is recommended for coincident disorders, for which there is already an indication due to the coincident disorder itself. However, it is also recommended for the management of gender dysphoria-associated distress. None of the studies included in the review in question were able to show a reduction in gender dysphoria through psychotherapy. Reed has helpfully translated some other bits of the report if you want to check that out. As always, links to everything I talk about are in the transcript. You can find it at skepchick.org or at patreon.com/Rebecca. Direct link is in the description. But this is just great news for people needing gender-affirming care in Europe. And as Reed points out, it really highlights the fact that the United States is an outlier when it comes to the medical science here. And that brings me back to the good news here in the United States. I know, things are awful, but you know what Mr. Rogers says? Look for the helpers. And one such helper is Ana Reyes, Washington, D.C.'s first Latina and first openly LGBT district court judge, who spent last week absolutely roasting members of the Trump administration. As you may or may not have noticed, because who can pay attention to every terrible thing that's happening right now, one of Trump's deranged executive orders banned transgender people from the United States military, stopping any trans people from joining up, and calling for current trans service members to be sniffed out and dismissed. In response, 6 transgender service members, including one with nearly 20 years of service, and one potential recruit, joined up with Lambda Legal, Human Rights Campaign, and Gender Justice League to sue the Trump administration for violating their rights and discriminating against trans people with no justification. The case happened to land on the desk of Ana Reyes, and for that we should all be grateful because this lady rules. In the first hearing last month, she described Trump's order as biologically inaccurate and, frankly, ridiculous. As Pink News reported, she went on to ask some pointed questions about the order, legislating how people should use pronouns. Would you agree that if the military is negatively impacted from the use of pronouns, we all have a lot bigger problems than pronoun use? Reyes asked, adding that if the military is damaged by pronoun usage, then our military is incompetent. I can't agree with that, Justice Department Attorney Jason Lynch replied. Judge Reyes continued, do you think usage of that preferred pronoun by that small group of people is going to impact our ability in combat situations? Explain to me how pronoun usage impacts military readiness. Because it doesn't. Because any common sense rational human being would understand it doesn't. The judge described the order as frankly ridiculous, claiming she would hear testimony from a U.S. military officer to testify in defense of the ban on pronouns if they could find one. If you can give me an officer of the United States military to get on the stand and say that because of pronoun usage, we are less prepared, I'll be the first to buy you a box of cigars, she said. She also gave them a very helpful metaphor. When the DOJ attorney couldn't say whether or not it was showing animus to call an entire group of people lying, dishonest people who are undisciplined, immodest, and have no integrity, she announced that she was instituting a standing order that says that no one who has graduated from UVA law school can appear before me. So I need you to sit down, please. I need you to sit down. When the DOJ attorney complied, she explained that the reason for the order was because UVA grads are all liars and lack integrity. This obliterated them so thoroughly that the DOJ issued a strongly worded petition to stop hurting our feelings, as coined by Joe Patrice at Above the Law, whining that Reyes was being impartial. The next hearing happened last week, and Reyes once again did not hide her contempt for Trump's sniveling minions. For instance, as reported by Tiffany Vilches on Blue Sky, at one point she asked the DOJ attorney, "You quote the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Do you know who that is?" The attorney responded, "No." Reyes, "He's the highest ranking uniformed military member. Feel free to ask the service member behind you if you need to verify." Holy shit, brutal. I love it. When the attorney told her to check his cited studies because they would overrule her own common sense, she asked him if she should be forced to listen to a Beyoncé album just because he cited it. The DoD can't say they're excluding Yankees fans because they upset unit cohesion due to the Beyoncé album, she said. But it turns out that the studies they cited weren't just irrelevant, they actively negated their point. Reyes asked the DOJ to support their assertion that trans service members were dangerous because they reduced group cohesion, and it appears that they offered this study conducted by RAND in 2016. Unfortunately for them, this study actually found the opposite of what they claimed. The limited research on the effects of foreign military policies indicates little or no impact on unit cohesion, operational effectiveness, or readiness. Commanders noted that the policies had benefits for all service members by creating a more inclusive and diverse force. Accordingly, that study recommended that the Department of Defense should ensure strong leadership and identify and communicate the benefits of an inclusive and diverse workforce to successfully implement a policy change and successfully integrate openly serving transgender service members into the force. When Reyes pointed all this out to the DOJ attorneys, they admitted that they hadn't even read the studies they were citing in the 2 months they had before this court case. In response to the DOJ's claim that transgender people should be excluded because of their higher rates of suicide, Reyes said, "Do you know why people with gender dysphoria have higher rates of suicide ideation? It's because they face such stigma and discrimination in society. All the studies show that transgender people and people with gender dysphoria are not more inherently subject to suicide or likely to have suicide ideation. That's not it. It's not biological. It's not inherent. I assume you would agree with me with the following. The answer to suicide ideation caused by discrimination is not further discrimination, right?" And yeah, of course she's right. There's a reason the DOJ wasn't able to cite any studies to support their claims. Those studies don't exist. Trans people have been in the U.S. military since at least the Civil War, when people who were assigned female at birth would join up by dressing as men. And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, they just did that during the war. No, some of them liked it so much they did it for the rest of their lives, like Albert Cashier. And we don't have a ton of hard data on trans service members because it hasn't been a topic of research until the previous decade or so. But the studies that have been done match that RAND study. For instance, in 2020, researchers surveyed 195 trans service members and found that transgender service members report above average physical health and few risk behaviors compared to cis soldiers. Last year, researchers found that it was actually policy changes like Trump's that led to negative impacts on the military, concluding that there's a real need for consistent policies that support inclusion of trans and gender diverse service members and reduce barriers to accessing healthcare services, which optimize the strength of a diverse military force. So yeah, the data tells us that if you want a strong military, you make it as inclusive as possible for everyone, including transgender people. Now, let me be perfectly honest with you. Do I think transgender people should be in the U.S. military? No. I also don't think cis people should be in the U.S. military. I don't think anybody should be in the U.S. military because it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing for the world, and it needs some healthy defunding and reorganizing before it can even reach the point where we consider it morally questionable. But if we're going to have a military, then God damn it, we should have a military that accepts people regardless of their sex, gender, sexuality, or race. And it is an absolute joy to see people like Judge Reyes stand up and tear these anti-science bigots a new asshole right before the public's eyes. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.